Hey guys, Omni here. We're back with Legends of Tomorrow. Last week's episode was actually pretty entertaining. I found it really hilarious. It was a lot of fun with Jack the Ripper, Bonnie and Clyde, Black Caesar, Henry VIII, and Brutus. I liked everything about the dynamic of that episode, especially with John being at the forefront of it for the most part. The only thing that I could criticize that is I don't really like the introduction of this weird love triangle thing between John, Zari, and Nate now. It's weird. I don't really like it. But anyway, we're going to be talking about this week's episode. So if you haven't seen it, be sure to tune out and come back once you have, because we're going to be diving into some spoilers. So this episode opens up with Mick again trying to mend ties with his daughter, where he tries to have a father-daughter weekend with her, which ends up with her trying to give an excuse to get out of it. But when he's like concedes and starts to walk away, he decloaks the time ship and is about to get on it and just, walk away. But then she sees the time ship and she's like, oh my God, what is that? No. You said father-daughter weekend. I'm coming with you. So she gets enticed by the ship. During this time, after going to hell in the previous episodes, Gary shows up on the ship with a support animal that he says his therapist gave him. Oh, Gary, you sly fox, you. I really thought that was going to be a weird plot point, but then it ended up being the primary plot point of this episode, because the crux of this episode, everything, the spine that everything rides on is these visions that Sarah is now having because of she's blind. She wakes up from her coma, she's blinded. But she's getting these visions now every time she makes contact with somebody of their deaths. And that becomes a mystery of what's going on in the ship. Before that happens too, the team has a little meeting to try to get together, and they're arguing over who's going to get to use the loom first, because they now have all the pieces and they have Charlie start to put it together. And, people want to do Bayrod. You have Astra wanting them to bring back her mother, and then Ava wants them to use the loom to fix Sarah. So there's a lot of back and forth on this, and Charlie takes the stand and is like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm the only one that can use it, so I'm going to choose. And she picks Bayrod. So obviously picking the most complicated person to try to repair, since he's not even originally supposed to be there. So his thread's all jacked up, and she starts to try to fix it. And she's just not able to, and whenever she starts to meddle with it, it creates this massive explosion that sabotages and breaks down the ship in the time stream. She comes to think that maybe she's not able to work the loom without her sisters, and maybe it's just not a one-person job, and she might not be able to do it. Astra offers to help because she was being groomed to become a Fate, but Charlie doesn't really give in to that, and they, go their separate ways while they try to figure things out. We have this back and forth throughout the episode. I'd call it a B plot, because it's right there along with what the main plot is here between Astra and Zari, trying to give each other the better reasons to sway them to who each other's cause. To, like, Zari's trying to, spit things at Astra to kind of try to turn her onto accepting Bayrod being brought back first, while Astra is trying to, do the same thing to make Zari agree with Charlie bringing her mother back first. She makes a fair point. Is like, maybe Charlie just needs to practice. Maybe she shouldn't have went straight into the most difficult thread first. Have her practice and do something with somebody who has a timeline that's not all messed up. Have her try it on my mother, and then maybe once she gets a feel of it, she'll be able to do Bayrod. Doesn't pan out, doesn't go anywhere. So things in the ship start to break apart. Different things start busting. The ship's stalled, but more things in the ship start going out. Power, the scanners, the security, the just everything starts breaking one by one, and they come to the conclusion that they have a saboteur on the ship. Immediately, everybody jumps onto Astra. She's like the clear bait here, and that's a lot of the tension in the episode, between the crew members, is them basically showing their distrust of Astra, and I feel like rightfully so they are. The only person defending her in this case is John, which makes sense. especially since the entire time he had been with her and he's trying to prove that she's not the one doing all of this. So he goes off on his own to try to figure things out. We still have Mick and Lita trying to bond while on the ship. You know, she still takes shots at him every once in a while. And, you know, the more she gets to know the crew and the ship and stuff, she's finding herself way more invested with the people around him, because to help with her studying for her history exam after the weekend's over, he decides to take her to Nate, and then he starts talking to her about how everybody on the ship is awesome. She seems a little infatuated with Nate for a hot minute, because he's like the young professor who's got powers and he's cool. He gets some snacks and he's hip kind of thing. So, you know, obviously starts to make Nate, or not Nate, Mick uncomfortable in the whole situation. And she still finds a way to turn it back on him. It's like, everybody on this ship seems so cool. What's your thing? He's like, I steal stuff and I shoot a gun. He's like, well, I protested guns. I don't like them. So, you know, Nate, being the guy that he is, hears all this because it's happening right in front of him. And I like what they did with that. He was like, you know, we just went to, you know, Victorian France or whatever. So maybe he stole something you could look at for that, or use something you could use. You know, go check out his stash. So the more they start to investigate what's going on around there, you know, Sarah's like, okay, we got to fix the ship. I'm the only one that can do it. You know, I trained to be an assassin, so I can just, you know, I've been trained to navigate and fend for myself without sight anyway. So I'll just need to instruct you how to fix the ship. So her and Ava are going around trying to fix everything. And as she interacts one by one with different people on the ship, she sees visions of their deaths. And she starts freaking out. She's trying to explain it to everybody. And she's like, eventually it comes into where they're trying to fix it towards the end. Or well, more like halfway through, John comes in and she sees herself in a small extended vision of herself standing in the reflection of a glass shard that was stabbed into his chest, revealing her as the killer. So then she decides to just like, all right, no matter what I say, you got to lock me in the medical bay. Crazy stuff. So while everybody else is trying to figure out, because stuff is still happening, Zari decides to channel past Zari and start hacking into the computer feeds, and she manages to bring up the security cameras back online to find out that it's each one of them, Nate, Charlie, Zari, all of them. There's footage of each one of them sabotaging a different thing, and then Charlie dumping the rings into the toilet. Something's manipulating them, or they're not remembering it, or it's mind control, and they still think this is Astra because of her ties to the occult, hell, and all that stuff, so they still think she's behind it. So when Gary goes to the med bay, he brings his support animal, and he breaks in, of course, because he's like, wants to take care of Sarah and help her calm down and comfort her by sharing his support animal with her. And when she touches the dog, she hears its voice and sees a vision of herself killing Gary and the dog saying, "Kill Gary." So it's so stupid, but I love it. This show gets so freaking bonkers sometimes, and this was just the right little kick, because I mean, it turns out his support animal, when all the truth is revealed, is a hellhound. It can influence other people to commit horrid acts, and that's what it's been doing around the ship. The further Zari looks into the security footage, she's able to expand it out, and at each one of the moments they're breaking the ship, the dog is barely off screen, barking at them, controlling them. And then Gary finally admits where he got the dog from, and it was when they were leaving hell. He called it a rescue. He saved this hellhound, brought it onto the ship because he thought it was cute. Of course, it was just taking on a pleasant disguise so that it'd be accepted. That was something too they did in Good Omens in a way. But you know, Sarah's going around, it's the dog, and of course they're not believing her. And then it just reveals itself, goes full ape shit, and just starts attacking people. And they're managed to get it back and fend it off. And once it reveals itself, they kind of all lock themselves in the cage that they were keeping Astra imprisoned in to protect themselves. And oh man, it's so funny, the whole sequence. Then because the only people out there are John, Sarah, and Mick and Lita, and it finds Lita and starts attacking her, which Mick forces himself in because they had a little spat earlier because she found out he was just insanely rich and wanted to manipulate time to make them even more rich, which is its own kind of evil. Gotta say, Lita, that's not cool to go back and invent something yourself ahead of time. That's time manipulation. That's causing an anachronism. Oh, Lita, Lita, Lita. But Mick manages to break in just before the dog gets onto Lita and fends it off for a moment before John gets its attention. He yells at the dog. Basically, he basically casts a taunt spell on it to make it draw its attention to him, which brings it after him and Sarah. Astra manages to manipulate her way out of the field, and still, despite everybody still not trusting her and whatever, she keeps them all locked up while she goes to find John, because the only way John can banish a demon, and it's something that he's done repeatedly, is something that's common in these kind of exorcism things. To give you power of the demon, you need to know what its name, even as recently as, what they did in the Conjuring series. You got to know the demon's name to take power over it. So he goes in, he's like, there's not much I can do about this thing. I can fend it off. Me and Sarah can hold it off, but until I get its name, I can't do anything. So Astra, above all everybody's expectations, shows up, tells John the dog's name, and he's able to send it back to hell. The deed is done. So everything's fine. Everything works out. But Lita and Mick, over the whole thing, especially after him saving her life, they finally come to a heart-to-heart and really kind of start to bond. And I really like that moment. It actually felt genuine at the end, especially with Mick not necessarily knowing how to react to it. And then, of course, everybody's cleaning up. Gary goes and digs out the rings from the toilet because, he brought the hell dog on the ship. So it's his punishment to go digging through everybody's dookie. And in the meantime, lo and behold, he picked up a new support animal along the way. And it's a rabbit. A cute, fluffy rabbit. When they asked where he got it from, he said a carny. A carny who told him never to feed it after midnight, so he brought some other demon animal onto the ship. Lol, 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 Gary. I did want to throw back to, because the demon dog itself, the one specifically, was related to the son of Sam, which was this call sign. I wouldn't say call sign. It's what the media dubbed this killer, David Berkowitz, who initially had said or stated in his confessions after his serial killings that it was the neighbor's dog had told him to kill the people that he killed. But of course, so this was a whole play on that, because they called the dog belonged to the son of Sam, and this is something they came in because it comes up whenever the dog's mentioned to Ava after Gary reveals some conversations I guess he's had with the dog or whatever. She calls back to her podcast about serial killers. So of course she knew about it. Later he blamed it. He said the dog thing was never true, but it was actually just Sam Hain himself had told him to kill the people. But nice little fun fact about it, because they're still keeping it tied in with this theme of serial killers, notorious members of history. I like that, tying it in, making that dog connected to, someone in history. I liked it. It was an interesting little tidbit. Fun fact for the episode. But before the episode closes out, Ava finally takes Sarah back to the medical bay. Now the Gideon is online, fully functional, and can try to start healing her blindness. Gideon scans her, and she can't detect the blindness. According to Gideon's scans, there's nothing wrong with Sarah, which I feel like was obvious. This was something that happened to her after facing off and seeing the full brunt force of a god. That it is a magical effect. It is something above and beyond her body. It's metaphysical. So there's going to be some other solution to get her sight back, and it can't be fixed this way. Zari tries to mend relationships with Astra. I don't know how that's going to go. I really think Astra is going to be redeemed by the end of this. That's the way I assume it's going to go. I think that's pretty by the numbers basic at this point. Not to slight it, but I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed all the character interactions in this. I'm still not on board with this current version of Zari, she still bugs me. I still miss old Zari so much. And they haven't done anything with this version to really win me over. Like, I understand and sympathize with some of her struggles, but I still don't like her personality or her character, and she's still very out for herself. I mean, technically she's out for Bayrod, but I think she's going about it in a very selfish way when everybody else has their own kind of stakes going on too. But I get that aspect of it. I still feel like Nate is left in this limbo place because they just keep screwing Nate on his romantic interests in this show. So who knows what's going to happen with that. I don't have anything else to say in this episode. I think that covers pretty much it. So what did you guys think? What did you guys think of this episode? What did you think about the wackiness, the Hellhound plotline? What was your favorite bit of this episode? Who's your favorite character, by the way? Because I haven't asked that at any times we've been talking about on this. It's easily John Constantine for me. Ray was right up there, but Constantine is definitely my favorite character in this show right now. But sound off. I'd love to know any of your thoughts down in the comments below so we can carry on the conversation after the video. How do you guys think this season's going to end? I know I just come up with random questions as I'm trying to sign off, but sorry, throw that in there. Let me know that down in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Take care, everybody.